30,000 people is jammed into the spacious facilities of Indianapolis Raceway Park for an exciting weekend of racing with the 26th annual U.S. Nationals. Nowhere is that panorama of speed more evident than in funny car racing. The #1 qualifier, the Blue Max of Raymond Beadle, 5.96 seconds. Filling the #2 spot, the Hawaiian of Roland Leong, the driver Ron Colson, the time 6 seconds flat. #3 with a 6.02, the Showtime Corvette of Tom Hoover. #4, Joe Pisano's car, driven by young Tom Ridings, to a clocking of 6.03 seconds. The #5 qualifier, Mike Hamby's War Eagle, Dale Poldy up, the time 6.04. As incredible as the times for the first 5 drivers are in Funny Car Eliminator, let's look at the rest of the field. There's the low 8 qualifiers, 6.06 for John Force, the second 8 in the 16-car field. Len Imbrogno on the bubble, 6.10. Only 0.14 of a second separating the entire field, the fastest field in the history of championship drag racing. Working with me at the Nationals is Steve Evans, and he knows why.
Dave, there are funny car races all over this country where low ET of the event wouldn't even qualify here this weekend at the U.S. Nationals. We asked some of the funny car drivers why this is the quickest field in history.
I just think the funny cars have stayed on top of their stuff a lot better than a lot of the other cars, and that way they've progressed a lot more. But the track is excellent. I think we would have probably even seen a few quicker times if the temperature had been a little bit cooler.
Well, they really take care of the racetrack here. I mean, it's the smoothest racetrack in the United States, there's no doubt, all the way to the finish line.
It's just the ideal track conditions and the fact that everybody's given it a maximum effort.
So it's no surprise to you that we have the quickest field in funny car history?
No, this was expected ahead of time. And in fact, going into the race, I had picked the bump spot at 6:09. I think that's where it's going to end up.
Well, the racers don't seem very surprised, do they, at the quickness of the field? But why should they be? The greatest cars in drag racing for the most important titles, the U.S. Nationals, maybe even world titles on the line, on one of the greatest drag strips in the country. So let's get ready for the finest funny car drag racing we've ever seen.
We're starting into the second round of funny car eliminations. But earlier today, we'll go back and take a look at what happened in round #1, where the #1 qualifier, the reigning world champion, Raymond Beadle, and the Blue Max, was matched against Roy Harris. Out of Trenton, New Jersey, comes Harris and Tom Ryan racing. Raymond Beadle into the wheel stand, the tire smoke, he heads to the guardrail, and here goes Roy Harris on the upset of the race. Raymond Beadle in qualifying had 2 5-second elapsed times, but when it came to and Roy Harris, his parachute did not open. He's got the car slowed, he misses the catch net, going slow enough that he can take a right turn and come to a safe stop. But for Raymond Beadle, one of the biggest disappointments of his career, he has absolutely intimidated funny car racing during qualifying, but when it came to eliminations, a little bit too much power, a little bit too much clutch, and the upset win goes to Roy Harris. Ron Colson, the #2 qualifier in the near lane, driving for Roland Leong, is up against the former world champion 4 times in a row. This man won it, Don Prudhomme, but he's had his troubles this weekend. He qualified in the second half of the field in this race in round #1. It's got to be Ron Colson, the favorite. And Prudhomme extends his lead from the moment they let the clutch out. And it is a big win for Don Prudhomme at 6.13 seconds to a very slow 7:07 for Ron Colson. As we watch, we see nothing obviously wrong, but something must have been the matter with Ron Colson's car because it just did not produce the power. With Don Prudhomme, let's join Steve Evans.
I never thought I'd come down here to the Snake and Victory and say, what an upset.
Yeah, kid, this whole race is an upset. Beetle went out first round. I beat just the Hawaiian. You just never know about drag racing, do you?
And Billy Meyer, I think you race him next round?
Fine. That's
you
fine.
both ran 6:13, so we'll have to go to the tower, I guess, and find out what the next digit is.
Yeah, he'll be tough. He'll be tough.
Okay, congratulations. It's been a tough weekend, huh?
You bet, Steve. Thank you.
Okay, Don Prudhomme, who early in the going of this race didn't even have his car as it was broken down in its truck in Tulsa, Oklahoma. He spent 2 fidgety days with no race car to drive. And here he goes into round number 2 with the Blue Max out.
And Steve, with a 6.13 second elapsed time, he is certainly right up there with everybody now. Don Prudhomme back on his game. Still in the first round of racing, Tim Gross from St. Joseph, Michigan, up against Dale Poldy. Poldy driving to War Eagle. One of those top 5 qualifiers is Poldy in the near lane, but the win goes to Tim Gross as we find the top qualifiers falling very quickly in round number 1 racing. Watching again, Tim Gross leaving the starting line right side by side with Dale Poldy. Poldy, the lower qualifier, has to be considered the favorite. But as we've seen already, favorites mean nothing here at the Nationals as Tim Gross takes the big first round win. Walking over is Poldy shaking hands with Tim Gross. And I'm sure Dale Poldy very dejected as we head into the second round of racing. We'll take a look at some of the drivers. Here's Roy Harris. This is Tim Gross, the man we just saw win the race in round number 1. Ed the Ace McCullough. Sanger, California. From Phoenix, Arizona, Trip Shoemake. Billy Meyer calls Waco, Texas home. Don Prudhomme, the 4-time world champion, many-time Nationals champion. Tom Ridings driving Joe Pisano's car. And Len Imbrogno, the number 16 qualifier. This is round number 2, and it is Roy Harris against Tim Gross. Harris in the far lane. This is Gross. We saw earlier this season on our Diamond P coverage of the Spring Nationals when Tim Gross had a horrifying crash, and he's certainly got to be considered for the comeback driver of the year. Roy Harris driving for Tom Ryan. With the wheels in the air goes Roy Harris. He's next to the guardrail. Tim Gross is somewhat out of control, but Roy Harris recovers first and takes the win. A relatively slow 6.31 seconds, but the time means nothing as the all-important win light comes on for Roy Harris. As we watch once again, you see the wheels in the air for Roy Harris. And once again, he gets very close to that guardrail. Close to the center line is Tim Gross. Tim having to back out of it. I'm sure some memories of that horrible crash at Columbus earlier this year were in Tim Gross's mind when he had to back out. This is Tim Gross coming out of his car on the return road. Out the escape hatch and just a little bit dejected. With the winner, let's join Steve.
Well, here's Roy Harris, who had the seemingly impossible task of getting around the Blue Max. You did that, and that's 2 down now.
Well, 2 more.
Okay. You look like you got awful close to the guardrail. Were you concerned about that?
I couldn't see it. The car was shaking so bad I didn't know I was that close to it.
So it blurs your vision that badly?
Oh, yeah. I knew it was over there, but I didn't feel it hit anything, so I kept going because I couldn't see him. That's what I was looking for.
This is Ed the Ace McCullough driving for the Super Shops. Ed had raced Tom Hoover in round number 1, one of the low qualifiers. Hoover went out with a broken transmission, was unable to complete the run, and McCullough had an easy go of it. This is Johnny Loper's car from Phoenix, driven by Trip Shoemake. 2 of the best of the Western 20 cars. Cars into the staging beam. The green light is on in a close race off the starting line. But Ed McCullough extends his lead and wins the race. 6.25 seconds. His speed over 234 miles an hour. As we watch this race again, elapsed time is the amount of time it takes to go from the starting line to the finish line, 1,320 feet or 1/4 of a mile away.
Boy, Ace, this has got to remind you of an earlier chapter in your career back in the early 70s when you owned not only this race, but all of funny car racing. Feels good.
Oh, it's great, Steve.
we're having a hard time today running in this air. There just isn't any, and I mean, everybody's off the pace a little bit, but...
Because of the humidity?
Really. I mean, so there's just no air here, you know?
Now, somebody said the birds weren't even flying. There was such little air.
That's about it, buddy. But we're sneaking up on it a little bit, you know. I don't know. I think it just run a 20-something then, so we run Prudhomme, or whoever wins this round, next round, so we'll see who's got lane choice.
Let's go back to Dave McClellan and see who indeed wins between Billy Meyer and Don Prudhomme, one of the key races of the day.
Steve, the railbirds around the racetrack are saying the winner of this race is the probable winner of Funny Car Eliminator. No more important race in this second round as Billy Meyer in the far lane comes up against Don Prudhomme. By a thousandth of a second, Prudhomme had run quicker in round number 1. That gave him the lane choice. He took the left-hand lane. It's difficult to tell if there is any advantage as to the lanes themselves. The huge crowd looking on intently as all the concentration from Meyer and Prudhomme is on the start, and it's very even for both drivers. And Billy Meyer pulls it out, 6.18 seconds for Billy Meyer to defeat Don Prudhomme. In our replay, we watch as Don Prudhomme begins to pull ahead in the middle of the course, but then the hard charge by Billy Meyer pulls it out just a few hundred feet from the finish line.
Dave, on Billy Meyer's car, there was a water line broken. Had that happened on the starting line, there'd have been water under a tire, which could have been disastrous for Billy Meyer, but apparently it happened past the finish line, and it's no problem. In 1974, Billy Meyer raced on Prudhomme, and this did happen on the starting line, the broken water. Congratulations. Anytime you drive around the snake, boy, you've earned one.
Yeah, mine started shaking. He came right by me. I was very surprised that I went back around him because, you know, you never go around Don that often.
Well, I don't know if you've had time to do the mathematics, but if you can get one more win light, get into the final round, you will have passed Beetle for the Funny Car World Championship points lead.
That's what I like to do. Go one round at a time. Tell me how far I go after I win the next one.
Okay, Billy Meyer just taking them one at a time, Dave.
And one at a time for Don Prudhomme. Not many smiles in the Snake's Pit at this point. Tom Ridings in the near lane out of Long Beach, California, drives for Joe Pisano. As the threatening weather continues to look worse, Len Imbrogno backs up Kenny Thornburg's Centurion. Imbrogno from Elyria, Ohio, is also a comeback driver, as he had the misfortune of smacking the guardrail at the Gator Nationals earlier this year. You also saw that on our Diamond P Sports coverage. But the car is back together, repaired, a new vehicle for Len Imbrogno, and he is in round number 2 at the U.S. Nationals against Tom Ridings. And he's got a lead right off the starting line. Ridings close to the center, but Tom Ridings coming from behind, 6.15 seconds at 240 miles an hour when he crossed that finish line. What a charge at the tail end of the race by Tom Ridings. Right there, you see at the end of the race as it is Tom Ridings from behind over Len Imbrogno, and back at the starting line, a friendly hug for a track official from Top Fuel driver Shirley Muldowney as Terry Kapp gets ready to go in the second round of Top Fuel Eliminator. His competition will be Shirley Muldowney, former world champion. She's never won this event, but she would certainly like to take home the 26th annual title. She's hot in the points chase, too. As you can see here, Gary Beck has a points lead, but with the bonus points available here at the U.S. Nationals, Jeb Allen, Shirley Muldowney, either one of them could catch him. Let's go to Steve and find out more about the points race.
The U.S. Nationals is the toughest and most important race of the season, so it's only fitting that there are bonus points toward the World Championship titles available here this weekend. That's especially important to Gary Beck, Jeb Allen, and Shirley Muldowney. We asked them about it.
Well, we got to take care of ourselves and win 3 rounds. That'll protect our lead, and we're looking for some of these strong running competitors this time of the year to knock out the 2 that are behind us with Shirley Muldowney and Jeb Allen.
What would you like to see happen points-wise?
Me win. You know, that's I just do my best, and we take everything we can get, and you know, we'd sure like to get the points. At this point in time is very important. We got Marvin Graham, we got Gary Beck, we got Shirley Muldowney. Now it was me and Beck all year leading them, you know, and then now it's anybody's drag race, really.
You know, a race like this, it's anybody's game. You know, it's really hard to predict a drag race. But I'd say the one that we're really watching now would be Jeb Allen.
Dave, I think the most interesting thing here is what Shirley Muldowney didn't say. By mentioning Jeb Allen, she really meant that she thinks she and Jeb are both going to pass Gary Beck in the points, and Beck has led virtually all season. We'll see.
And see we will, Steve, as Shirley continues to get ready for the next round of racing in Top Fuel Eliminator. It gives us a chance to go back and take a look at some of the action in the earlier rounds. In round number 1, we'll take a look as Jody Smart from San Antonio, Texas, had the ride of his life. Jody came onto the Top Fuel scene in 1980 with a vengeance, running consistent 580s at over 240 miles an hour, at over 247 in the first round. His chute didn't open, the brakes didn't stop the car, and Jody stuffed it into the catch net. He wasn't quite as lucky as Roy Harris in getting that car slowed down, and the dragster itself suffering heavy damage. But the crew of Jody Smart and J.E. Christic worked hard and long, using the parts from Mike Tartar's car to get the entry back into competition, and it came up in round number 2 against the low qualifier Marvin Graham. Jody Smart with a makeshift spoiler on the front, but the suspension components off of Tartar's car fit perfectly. They're a pair of identical cars out of the chassis shop of Tony Caceres. All the work now must pay off as they have to face the man that qualified at 5.68 seconds. That is the 4th quickest time in the history of drag racing. Marvin Graham from Oklahoma City. He's a former Nationals champion and would love to repeat. You know Jody Smart's got to be remembering the last ride he took down this racetrack when his car running 247 miles an hour saw the parachute not open, and he slammed into the catch net. But right now it's trying to beat Marvin Graham. He did not do it. 5.92 seconds for Marvin, 247 miles an hour. Well, it was a good run and a fine speed for Marvin. Some problems here with severe vibration causing mechanical difficulties. Steve had a chance to catch up with Marvin and his crew in the pit area and find out what was wrong.
Dave, hanging from the hoist here at the Fraser and Rice pits is the car of our low qualifier Marvin Graham. Marvin told us the car shook very hard, and apparently it did, so badly in fact that it broke the chassis. They discovered it in their pits, came over here to get some of that famous volunteer help you can always get from the guys that didn't survive first round. But going into round number 3, Marvin Graham has got to wonder, is this chassis going to hold up?
We're still looking at round number 2 racing, and an interesting matchup here between two seemingly identical race cars. The brand new entries of Terry Kapp in the near lane from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, and his competition Jerry Ruth, the self-proclaimed king of drag racing from Seattle, Washington. One of the innovative approaches to running a Top Fuel dragster is contained in the cockpit of Ruth's car.
This gauge right here is standard issue on every Top Fuel dragster and funny car. It's the critical oil pressure gauge, and the only gauge that any of them carry, with the exception of Jerry Ruth of Seattle, Washington. In an effort to add consistency and to break fewer parts and pieces, Jerry Ruth has added a tachometer here. On the starting line, they bring the tach up to 3,000 RPMs, then check the fuel pressure. If the fuel pressure is low, they won't even run the car. If it's right, go to the starting line, provided that the engine temperature gauge tells them they're at 200 degrees. At the far end of the racetrack, they come to this gauge for reference, and this is the boost pressure, the blower pressure. If it's down, they know they've got to make some adjustments. Does it work? Well, Ruth is yet to burn a single piston in this engine and has won 3 consecutive races.
And Steve, that's a tribute to both Jerry Ruth and his crew chief Lee Beard. But right now, in round number 2 racing, he's up against Terry Kapp. A great leave, Kapp loose in the middle of the course, and oh, how close it is. Terry Kapp pulls it out in the last few feet. 5.86 seconds. How close was it? Watch as we see just a few feet separating the two cars at the finish line. And a very happy man is Terry Kapp, the Canadian, as he moves now into round number 3 to race Shirley Muldowney. Other competitors we'll be seeing from Denver, Colorado comes Junior Kaiser. Connie Colita, the former crew chief for Shirley Muldowney, now driving his own car. Jeb Allen locked in that points chase with Gary Beck. Marvin Graham, the low qualifier. Will his car be ready? We'll know in a moment. Jim Head, now this is a surprise story of this U.S. Nationals. Gary Beck, he is concentrating on continuing to maintain his points lead. And Shirley Muldowney is another of the competitors that's trying to reach for that world championship title. She is against Terry Kapp. We just saw him with a fine 5.86 second defeat. Jerry Ruth. Shirley very relaxed at this race. She has been running exceptionally well. Buster Couch, the chief starter, going over saying to Terry Kapp, everything's okay, bring it to the starting line. All eyes on the electronic starting device known as the Christmas tree, and Shirley Muldowney red lights by just a few thousandths of a second. She runs the car very hard to the finish line. Terry Kapp, the winner, he just coasts it through, as we see here. Shirley leaves early, no question about it. And Steve, did she know if she red lighted?
I love those guys.
Never know. Shirley Muldowney's reflex.
You ran a 5.86, Shirley Muldowney. Did you know that you red lighted?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, you red lighted, babe. I'm sorry to be the one to tell you that.
Guess that's how it works, doesn't it?
Yeah, but when you cut the lights as fine as you do, and you beat so many people with slower elapsed times, that you've got to red light once in a while. It's just the law of averages.
Oh, rats. Well, it was a close red light, though, wasn't it?
Oh, it had to have been. A 5.86, a beautiful elapsed time, but unfortunately those things happen.
Yeah, I guess. Next time, huh?
Would you rather red light once in a while or be late?
I'd rather red light.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, I'd rather red light.
Okay, well, I'm sure now you're going to be watching this round with us to see what happens to points leader Gary Beck and Jeb Allen.
No, I think I'm going to go to the trailer and have a cool brew.
A good attitude.
Yeah.
Thank you for being such a doll all weekend.
Steve, I agree with Shirley. Nothing better to do at that moment than go have a cool one. As Connie Kalita, her former crew chief, comes up against Junior Kaiser. Kaiser from Denver, Colorado, did not qualify all that well, but has been consistent in the 6.0s. Connie has been in the 5s throughout this race, looking like the knight of yore with the face mask down, covering his eyes. Connie Kalita concentrating on the Christmas tree. And something going wrong with Connie Kalita's car right off the starting line, and it's another win for Junior Kaiser. 6.04 at 230 miles an hour, and Connie Kalita just coasts it across the finish line. Junior turns off, and he'll be back in the next round of racing as our next pair come to the starting line. And is this car ready? This is the quickest car at the U.S. Nationals. 5.68 seconds in qualifying, consistent 580s, 590s in eliminations, but you saw the welding going on after the earlier rounds of racing. He's up against one of the toughest, number 2 in the points chase this season, Jeb Allen, trying to pull off the upset. Can he do it against Marvin Graham? And it's Jeb Allen by a car length. 5.83 seconds. His speed, 243 miles an hour. And this is a close race as Marvin appeared to be off the starting line first, but it's Jeb Allen coming from behind, and at the finish line you see just one car length separates those two drivers.
David, what was maybe the race of the day, the winner Jeb Allen, who had to come from behind, shakes hands with Marvin Graham, the low qualifier. And to Jeb, it's particularly important because he is so close in the points. Gary Beck still in competition. Shirley Muldowney now out. Jeb could conceivably really catch up to Gary Beck if he can continue with this. Marvin, I know, you had your heart set on this one. You were the bad guy on the block.
Yeah. Just got out there and smoked the tires, and he went around.
According to the tower and the reaction timers, you were off the mark first.
Yeah, I think so. I didn't see him for a long ways out there, and then the car got really loose and shook really hard. And
I saw you welding on the car before this race. Was it healthy?
The car was okay. We fixed it. It had a crack in the bottom main rail from the round before, but it was okay.
Well, the weather is anything but okay here at the U.S. Nationals as Gary Beck, the current points leader, apparently has problems. Something has gone wrong with his reverser, and Jim Head, a surprise story at the U.S. Nationals, is approaching the staging beams. The crew around Gary Beck's car has been unable to get it to move forward under its own power. The crew chief, Jim Wright, talking to Gary Beck. He gives the signal to the starter, send him on. He starts taking off his gloves, has something going wrong in the drivetrain. And Jim Head, a former competition eliminator racer who started with an Econorail, moved up to Pro Comp eliminator with an alcohol-burning dragster for about 6 months, then moved into Top Fuel, teamed up with Jake Kaufman. When Jake crashed his car, has now moved into the semifinals of Top Fuel at the most prestigious drag race of them all, the U.S. Nationals. And the sprinkles are starting. We told you the clouds look bad. Not just sprinkles, but severe rain as the crowd heads for some cover. We're going to have to call a halt to the action at the moment at the U.S. Nationals as the rains have come. Here is the low qualifier and the defending world champion, Bob Glidden. This is Frank Iaconio from Totowa, New Jersey. Lee Shepard hails from Arlington, Texas. And the grump himself, Bill Jenkins of Malvern, Pennsylvania. Our first pair, the classic Ford versus Chevrolet matchup. The Ford Fairmont of Bob Glidden against Frank Iaconio in the Chevrolet Camaro. A great lead by both drivers. The wheels in the air for Iaconio, but Glidden seems to have pulled a slight lead off the starting line. And at the finish, a one-car length victory for Bob Glidden. A quick time, 8.46 seconds. These cars running on gasoline, limited to 2 4-barrel carburetors, and utilizing a stock production line type automobile with lots of modifications, the factory hot rods. 2 of the best Chevrolets in the business. Lee Shepard in the near lane. In the far lane, Bill Jenkins. And Shepard pulls a bit of a lead off the starting line over the grump. It'll be Lee Shepard against Bob Glidden in the final. Before we get to the semifinals of Top Fuel and Funny Car, let's take a look at the winners of other categories in competition here at the Nationals. In stock eliminator, Ray Cook defeated Al Provost. The super stock champion is Jim Baburka as he defeated Phil Zupka. Modified eliminator Crawford Benham took his first ever national win over Ron Anderson. Competition eliminator Dick Hickernell defeated Jeff Leininger. And in Pro Comp eliminator, Billy Williams won his second U.S. Nationals title in a row, defeating Darrell Gwynn. In Top Fuel motorcycle, the awesome Bo O'Brocta defeated Larry McBride. Before we go back into professional racing, let's take a close-up look. At the Pro Stock points chase.
Dave, here are the players in the greatest single-season rivalry in the history of drag racing, especially in Pro Stock, Lee Shepard and Bob Glidden. You guys have raced each other every major event this year. What's the score? How many have you won?
We won 5 so far.
And that leaves you with?
Only 2.
Yeah, but you've done very well in the regional trail. What happens if you win here today?
Well, it'll still go down to the last race.
As far as the World Championship?
Right.
But you'd come away with a pretty good lead.
Yeah, we'd be in a lot better shape than we are right now.
What happens if you win, Bob?
Well, if we could win this particular run, we'd leave here with about a 200-point lead.
You know, I've seen you guys at the head of the lanes just like this quite a few times this year. You're usually kidding each other, joking around. You're deadly serious today.
This is a very important race for both of us. Lee and his guys don't want to lose the lead, and we very much want to gain the lead.
Started with a field of 32 Top Fuel dragsters 2 days ago. We're now down to the final 4. It is Jim Head in the near lane against Jeb Allen. Jeb is number 2 in the points chase and would love now, with the points leader out of competition, to advance rapidly. But he's got to get by Jim Head here in the semifinals. And it is Jeb Allen with a big lead, and the blower belt comes off of Jim Head's car. It's Jeb Allen into the finals of the Nationals. His time, 6.03 seconds off his earlier 580 pace. But as we watch again, you'll see they leave the line together. Jeb begins to pull away, and then the engine going sour, and the blower belt, the supercharger drive belt, coming off.
Dave, Jeb Allen is always pumped up, but he looks a little shaken here. You okay?
Yeah, it's shook really bad. It knocked me for a little bit of a loop there, Steve.
It's like getting hit in the head with a baseball bat, isn't it?
It's, if I quit this, I'm going to be a boxer, I guess. I can take some pretty good punches, you know.
You've been in at least a dozen final rounds of important events, but somehow this one's really special.
Yeah, we've been in the semifinals here for the last 3 years, and it'd be really wonderful to win. We made it past that point. I think it smoked the tires. I don't know. It shook real bad, and I just lifted a little bit and shifted and hung in there, you know.
Well, he hung in all the way to the finals. Here's the last pair of this round. It's Junior Kaiser against Terry Kapp. And Terry Kapp has got to be favored over the Colorado entry of Kaiser. Kaiser qualifying far down in the field, has made it though to the semis. The crewman for Terry Kapp squirting a little fuel into the injector system, making sure the engine does not lean out as the burnouts are completed and they approach the starting line. Terry Kapp in the previous round had a lucky break as Shirley Muldowney red-lighted away her chance for victory. He was untested, only an 8-second elapsed time. What can he do here? And it is Terry Kapp, wire to wire, 587, 236 miles an hour. That means by virtue of the lower ET, he will have lane choice over Jeb Allen as they go into the finals. You see Junior Kaiser not a force to be reckoned with in this race against Terry Kapp into the finals.
Go Terry Kapp. Everybody comes to this race hoping to win, but in your wildest dreams, did you think you'd make the final with a brand new race car?
Well, it's pretty hard to say, Steve. We've been working on it hard, and you know, we're like every other. 31 of the other guys that are trying like a bugger. We hope to get there. It's the first time I've been this far. I've lost the semifinals here to Shirley, close to what was going on there yesterday, 2 years ago, and I'm satisfied up to this point.
I'll bet you are. You've got lane choice over Jeb in the final. Is that important?
No, I don't think it's important at all. I'll run either lane.
Well, he has his choice, but as you heard him say, Terry Kapp doesn't think it makes any difference. To these two racers, it may mean everything, though. Ed McCulloch in the Super Shops car is in the near lane. He is racing against Roy Harris, who has gotten to this point by virtue of his big first-round victory over the #1 qualifier, the Blue Max of Raymond Beadle. Ed McCulloch in the previous round over Trip Shoemake with a 6.25-second time, gave him the choice of lanes. He took the left lane. Roy Harris out alongside of him. Boy, this is going to be a close race at the finish line, and it is Ed McCulloch burning some pistons and obviously with engine problems, but the all-important win. Once again, we see as Ed McCulloch comes off the starting line side by side with Roy Harris at the finish line, just a few feet separating those two funny cars.
Haysher in the final, but the motor is popping and crackling and sizzling. It's got oil all over it. It's hurt.
Betty, we'll be there. We got a lot of those left.
That's not a big problem, huh?
No. I mean, we gambled. We had to. I mean, that was a close drag race.
By gambling, you mean what?
I mean, we stepped on it. I mean, today's a new day. I told you this morning, you can't go in soft. We stepped on it. It ran. It's hurt. Now we got to fix it.
This is like the old days. The last time you won this race was '72. You owned the sport then.
I wish it could be that way again, Steve. I really do.
It may be in just a few minutes.
Well, I hope so.
Okay.
In fact, Steve, he not only won in 1972, he also won the funny car title back in 1971. Back-to-back victories for Ed McCulloch as what he calls the good old days. Joe Pisano's car driven by Tom Ridings against Billy Meyer of Waco, Texas. And Meyer is trying to make his move on Ray Beadle in the funny car points chase. He's got to get by Tom Ridings, though, to make it into the finals. And this could be a close race as young Ridings has been doing a great driving job. A fine crowd on hand considering the one-day delay, and up in smoke goes Billy Meyer. He gets back on the throttle, but Tom Ridings is not to be headed, and look at the time. 6.12 seconds, his speed over 236 miles an hour. He will go into the finals. A bit of a favorite over Ed McCulloch, but right here you see where Billy Meyer loses the race. The tires smoking, meaning they have lost traction. And look at the big lead that Tom Ridings built at this point.
You have lane choice over McCulloch. Which lane will you take if conditions stay the same?
I'm going to stick an old lefty. That's where I've been all the time, and it's worked good.
Okay, congratulations.
Yeah.
Fantastic performance.
Thank you.
See you.
And look at the smile on Tom Ridings' face. If you don't think he's happy, he's just waiting for his crew to come down and pick him up. Back in the pits already is Jeb Allen. He's hard at work on his race car, but not a lot of frantic activity. The crew seems to be relatively calm, as it does over in Terry Kapp's pit area. Now the crew chief Lee Beard for Jerry Ruth in, helping out a little bit. The work in the Tom Ridings pit area is somewhat subdued. But I'm certain that the action is much faster over at Ed the Ace McCulloch's pits. Steve, what's going on?
In the drag racing vernacular, Dave, this is known as a thrash. Whipping a motor together in just a few minutes to come back for a final round. Bernie Lewis, crew chief on this car, what's going on?
Well, we burned a few pistons that time because we had a lean condition. Weather changed on us, but I think we can straighten it out. And we're looking good right now. We just got a few hearts to clean up and ready for another one.
Ridings is one tough customer today.
They're running awful good, but it's close. There's only 700s difference, and I think we can pick up a 10th.
He has lane choice. Is that a factor?
No, not at this racetrack. Not now. We'll be fine. That other lane is just fine. We ran our best ET in that lane, so we're looking forward to it.
This is a dream come true for you, even as a crew chief.
Absolutely. U.S. Nationals is something everybody wants to win.
Thanks, Bertie.
Thank you.
While the work goes on in the Ed McCulloch pit area on the starting line, it is Pro Stock Eliminator Final. Once again, they meet in the last round. Carrying the big number 1, the defending world champion Bob Glidden up against Lee Shepard. And it's a red light for Bob Glidden and a very happy crew member of Lee Shepard's crew. And it is Lee Shepard, your U.S. Nationals champion, 8.51 seconds, 160 miles an hour. But the story's on the starting line where Bob Glidden left just a little too early and the big red bulb is glowing.
David, what you're looking at is undoubtedly the 1980 world champion in Pro Stock Eliminator, but most importantly right now the U.S. Nationals champ. Glidden red-lighted.
Thanks, Steve. I didn't know that till about 15 seconds ago.
Oh, you thought you lost?
Yeah, I thought I got a good light. I didn't see how he could leave that, that quick. I didn't see the red light, no.
You have left on him and beat him with slurry tees a couple of times this year. I think that put extra pressure on him, don't you, to leave on time?
Well, I guess it did.
All the work is over for our funny car racers. Joe Paisano's car, driven by young Tom Ridings. He's 25 years old and a college student during the week. Ed the Ace McCulloch from Sanger, California, a professional drag racer through and through, but he also owns an industrial steel business and races on the weekends. McCulloch has been a 2-time champion at this U.S. Nationals, but that was a long time ago. The final 2 cars out of 16, the quickest field in the history of drag racing, finally settling it out between these two, Ed McCulloch and Tom Ridings, in the finals at the U.S. Nationals at Indy. And a bit of a hole shot, it appears, for Ed McCulloch. And unless something goes wrong, Ed McCulloch wins it. 6.27 seconds at 231 miles an hour. And they may have lost another engine, but I will assure you they don't care at this point. A big lead right off the starting line for McCulloch, and Tom Ridings tries as he can, but was unable to make up the difference.
Dave, this is Bernie Lewis, the young crew chief on this car who formerly worked for Gary Back. Before that, the Englishman Clive Skelton, one of the hardest working young men in this sport. And as we've seen between rounds, it is a thrash. Physically exhausting and even punishing to the driver. Now they got a little champagne here. That's expired. I got to open it with a pair of pliers. So Bernie Lewis is going to personally handle the victory celebration down here. Jerry Verhill, the crew chief on the Gordy Bond Pacemaker car, pitched in today to race with his old pal, the Ace. Bernie Lewis taking a giant swig of the bubbly, and Ed the Ace McCulloch celebrating along with his crew, all of them from California. And Tom Ridings, runner-up here at this event, who was just, I think, tickled to be in the final round, and a fine sportsman himself. Joe Paisano, the car owner of the runner-up machine, congratulating the Ace, who's been a good friend for a lot of years. I don't think I've ever seen even the runners-up as happy as they are down here today. Just incredible.
Incredible it is, Steve, as we have finally gotten to the last 2 cars of this U.S. Nationals. It's been a long, long race with the rain delay caused right about halfway through. Final eliminations delaying it 1 day. We've come down now, and a great crowd has turned out, unexpected as they were, to show up, because nobody expected to be racing down this Indianapolis Raceway Park quarter mile. But right now, Jeb Allen against Terry Kapp, the final in Top Fuel Eliminator. Both cars very closely matched on the performance standards. set earlier in the race, and they leave the line side by side. It appears to be Terry Kapp with the lead, and it is Terry Kapp, the national champion in Top Fuel Racing. 5.82 seconds his elapsed time. A close race, as it was a 5:89 for Jeb Allen, and you see just a slight lead being built up there in the first few hundred feet for Terry Kapp, and it was enough to carry him to the winner's circle.
Tell me about the race. What happened?
Oh, it was just excellent. We everything worked. Everything was clicking our way all weekend. You know, we got here on time. We're usually late. You know, my crew chief Bernie came with us. He usually flies and he takes the wrong airplane. You know, everything was just working good. And we you know what bushing is? We bush to see who got the bed. I got a bed. I usually get a rollaway. I had a bed all week. It's just been great, and the motor is just as clean and dry as a whistle.
This could be the start of a lot more of these, don't you think?
Well, as far as my wife Rochelle and my son Jared are concerned, if they can come, fine. But if not, I don't know. But, you know, we're part-time professionals, and we raced and we got the time. This weekend we had the time, and here we are, man.
Well, congratulations to you. Canada and all the Canadian fans are here, and there are thousands of them.
I know we've got a lot of fans back home, and I only wished half of them that were here could have stayed, because I like doing it for them, too.
I know you do. A happy Canadian. You'll take that U.S. green north of the border.
The U.S. Nationals has been a roaring success. Steve, what's your observations?
David, the U.S. Nationals, as always, lived up to its advance billing. The Superstars, they did well in qualifying, but in eliminations, some shining new faces living up to even more than their own expectations. The quickest funny car field in history, our first Canadian Top Fuel winner at a national event since 1973, Glidden and Shepard continuing their intense rivalry. But most of all, I think, in 6 days, 1,000 entries made 7,000 runs down the quarter mile, and no one got as much as a Band-Aid.
An impressive statistic indeed, Steve. This 26th annual U.S. Nationals is what drag racing is all about. Incredible performances highlighted by the quickest funny car field in history, the drama and hard work that goes on in the pit area, and of course the continuing story of the World Championship Series points chase. From Indianapolis Raceway Park, for Steve Evans, this is Dave McClellan saying so long for now. Coverage of the 1980 National Hot Rod Association U.S. National